Yeah, gosh.
It was all night long.
We were, had all the kids over, and it was about 7 o'clock, and my daughter said, "Look at all this damage around town. We didn't have anything. No power outage, nothing."
And that's the problem, is that we ended up having like a shotgun blast. It was here. And so you got 10s and 5 people, and 7 and 3. And so if they were all in one place, we got the big ones going fast.
Right.
They hustle.
Is Cole not coming?
I'm expecting him.
All right, looks like it just hit 4 o'clock, so if you'd put green on your mic, that'd be great. I'd like to call to order the Monday, April 25th regularly scheduled board meeting, starting with invocation. Lord, we thank you for all your blessings you've bestowed on us. In your name, allow us to provide the best results from this meeting that benefit all our residents and employees. Grant that we be fair, just, and project positive ongoing operations that benefit the community. With our thoughts and actions, allow us to serve your will. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right along, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any comments from the audience? Anybody signed up? Nope.
I have comments.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you. Push that.
Yeah, just make it green.
There you go.
Got her.
It's green now. John Lang, 625 Grand Avenue. I'm here to talk about what I understand is the prospective second half of the rate increase. I read somewhere in whatever remains of our local news media that Mr. Gordon had said that that may have to come into play, may have to be adopted by the board because of a reduction in the surplus or reserve funds. Mm-hmm. I submit that's no kind of answer, really, for the people who are the owners of this municipal utility. Let me give you some information that comes off my most recent bills for electric. For the rental property I have, when you take the amount of the electric bill and divide it by the kilowatt hours used, we paid for that address 16.5 cents per kilowatt hour. At my home, using the same process, what we paid was 14.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, you'll remember last October in phase one of the increase, I came in and said that I did some arithmetic and determined, based on the number of kilowatt hours purchased, that our cost for kilowatt hours over the course of the last fiscal year was 4.2, 4.3 cents per kilowatt hour. And that when I took all of the expenses of the electric department and did the same arithmetic, the total cost was 7.2 cents. Now, I haven't heard anybody say, John, you didn't carry the one or anything like that, so I've proceeded with the assumption that my arithmetic was correct. So, on these two accounts, which I think are probably typical of a moderate or small home, your markup is 100% or better. And at 100% on 7,500, give or take, of your maybe 8,000 not quite 8,000 total customers, you ought to be doing all right. Now, I appreciate the fact that residential customers use 1/3 of the electricity that we goes through the Board of Public Works, and that the industrial and the commercial customers, well, the industrial customers use 50%. The commercial customers then would use in the neighborhood of 1/6 of the total electricity. So there are two things here that I think we ought to clarify one way or the other. Number one, you're either losing money on the other categories of accounts. I doubt that. I know they have a better deal than the residential customers, but I doubt that you're losing money. You might be. And if you are, the public needs to know that. Or the other thing that might be happening is the Board of Public Works has gone on spending for capital projects as though you were able to adopt the whole increase last October. Now, I don't know, but I suspect that is most likely. So what I would urge you to do and what I would request that you do is, if you get ready to talk about another increase, even though your markup for residential customers is somewhere in the range of 100%, that maybe on this raise you give us a break and answer the question, why is the accumulated surplus in decline? Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. If we can move into Darren's general manager report, please.
I've got really just a couple of quick things. Number one, we have next to you, we have received our Award of Excellence in Safety. One of the things that we've been striving to do is, if you look at our mission statement, is that we are to provide safe, reliable utilities. And those are things that we strive for every single day. One of the things is to make sure that our safety becomes a culture and not just a checklist. And we've been working hard at that. We have received the APPA Safety Award of Excellence. And that means that we are within the one of 200 out of 2,000 utilities annually that receive the award. And we're placed in this category according to the number of work hours and ranked based on the most incident-free records. And so we're very, very grateful to our employees who have really made it to where when they're out digging in the holes and working around ditches and et cetera, working around power lines and those things, that if they make a mistake, there's no forgiveness. It is absolutely instantaneous and can be catastrophic and life-threatening. And so we make that essential and absolutely number one priority for us. And it's also a priority for our customers, that we want to keep them as safe as possible. So we make sure that we work and maintain standards. And so we're proud of that. The second one is we've also received the APPA Excellence in Reliability Award. Now that's a rough one today, having last night that we got hit by a pretty good storm. And Matt is going to go into a little more detail on it. But we had one of those storms where in the past, sometimes there's one area of town that gets hit hard. And we're able to jump in, and that's just, you have one part of the tree trunk that you're able to fix and that the power's on. Well, this was more like a shotgun blast, and we've had people out and so we had crews out all night long. They've been busting it, and there's still some people out right now. Much of that is because their own side of the power supply has been harmed. Either their connection to the house or things like that. Their own trees have come in and caused that connection to be harmed. And so we're waiting for them to get it corrected, and then we can get them back on. And so we still have some people out because of that. But again, it was kind of that shotgun blast, and Matt will share some more with it. The recognition is we have an e-tracker that we do every single week, every single month. You'll see it later on in our report that we have provided for you. You'll see it every single board meeting. But the numbers that we have been going down. Much of that is because we've been proactive in tree trimming, but we can't get outside of our easements And what happens is that we have an easement that protects our power lines, but it's the trees that are outside of that. When you have a 60 or 70 mile an hour wind, that's able to pull those trees into that easement area, and we do have outages, and so we have that balance. From the APPA, it says the utilities recognized here are truly elite when it comes to keeping the lights on. Their communities should be proud of the hard work and dedication of their local power providers as they earn this truly deserved recognition. Nationwide, the average public power customer has their lights on for less than half the amount of time, lights out for less than half the amount of time that customers of other types of utilities do. We are proud to receive this recognition. It is a testament to the hard work of all our staff to ensure that we keep power to Hannibal. So thank you to our staff for the great work that they've done. The last thing that I have also is a report. We have been working on ensuring that we have 3 months in which to let people know that we are considering the removal of the injection of fluoride into our water. Currently, we've had 103 people communicate with us to remove that, to stop injecting, and we've had 86 people or organizations write and say they would like us to keep injecting it. So it's pretty close. I wouldn't call that a significant difference. But that is all I have.
All right. It's actually very commendable to have received both of those awards, the safety and the reliability. Give kudos to all the folks that are involved, and I know everybody from the bottom up are involved to do that. Anybody have questions of Darren's report?
How many more days do we have before the fluoride?
We need to keep it up till early June.
Okay.
Okay.
And on a monthly basis, we're putting an article in the paper. We still have it as the #1 banner of our website. So we're pushing that as much as we can so that anybody that wants to comment can.
Are we putting that anywhere else besides the paper? I know that the paper is, it should be on.
Oh, he's on.
Okay.
I know the paper's kind of hit or miss. Are we putting it anywhere else so that anybody else that wants to see it can see it? Just so we're getting the full picture of it.
Erica?
Yes, so I have pushed out the fluoride removal notice each month on our social media platforms as well as the website, and then we're doing the newspaper as well. So we're getting it electronically as well.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
we got 11 more responses over the weekend from the post that I shared on Thursday last week. So we're just kind of recirculating it. It's also pinned at the top of our Facebook page, so
Okay.
it's kind of easy for people to it'll be the first thing they see when they get on.
Awesome.
On the
Okay.
page, so.
Great. Thank you.
Bob?
All right.
Darren, I was curious if there's any way that you're tracking to see that one person doesn't submit 25 answers?
We're gonna save it, and we're gonna provide it all to them, and we'll comb through it and make sure that they don't have too many
Either
redundant.
one way or the other, I mean.
Correct.
Whichever, so
Correct.
that is truly individual,
Yep.
separate answers.
But we're not gonna comb them out right now. If
Yeah.
whatever we get, we're collecting, we're not gonna comb it out, but we'll make sure that that happens in the end.
Okay.
If no more questions about it, then we'll move right to Matt Mundlinger's operations report, please.
Good afternoon. Just to give you an update on the storm. Last night, about 6:30, we had the storm move through. We had roughly 1,500 meters out. Most of those on Circuit 54, which is fed from our Ford Street substation. So it's mainly south of 36, along Country Club, down to Gray Street, down Pleasant Street towards Highway 61. And then 33 comes out of our Indian Mound substation, serves Surrey Hills, out toward Pioneer Trail, and then Hummingbird. By the time we went home, about 4 o'clock this morning, there was about, I think, 25 or 30 that were still out. We did find some more when we ran a report this morning. Now we're down to about 15. We did have 6 poles that are broken. 5 of those were caused by trees. So again, falling from outside what we would normally clear as part of the easement trim or the tree trimming, falling through our power lines. They get caught. They either hit the pole and knock it down, or in most of these instances, they hit the power lines and it drug a pole down or maybe damaged a couple of them. And so these were all in backyards, and so we're working to get those replaced. The one, it was just I don't know why at this point where it broke off. I don't know the age of the pole, and so we'll get that repaired as well. What happens in a lot of these instances too is a tree limb out of a customer's yard or their neighbor's yard will fall, hit their service line, well, it'll rip it off the house. It is their responsibility to reattach that mast, get it inspected by the building inspector, and then we'll come back and re-energize it, provided we've got our end of the power up. So right now, again, we're less than 15 total people out. I'm trying to think. I can only think of 4 of them that would be out because we haven't got a pole replaced yet in the backyard. But the guys are working on that right now, and hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have everybody back on that is waiting on us, and then we'll just be waiting on those to get the service mast reinstalled and inspected. So, as Darren alluded to, the APP Reliability Award, that's where our 12-month rolling average of 99.994% comes into play. This is, I think it's 3rd or 4th month in a row we've achieved that. Our number of outages did increase by 2, but overall outage minutes decreased. You can see here we had some equipment issues, one tree issue on Broadway, and then the other 2 were unknown. Again, squirrels have been the nemesis that always have shown up in our outage reports. We didn't have any this month. The crew did install 16 animal guards, and that's something that they're continuing to work on. Something that beyond their normal duties, the maintenance mechanics and maintenance electricians were prepping. We're replacing the 2 air compressors at the wastewater treatment plant that compress the atmospheric air. We pull the oxygen out to use it in our treatment process. Those 2 compressors that we're replacing were originally installed in 2012 and have been running 24 hours a day ever since. And so they've hit the end of their useful life. They're no longer serviceable. And so last fall we ordered new ones, and those 2 arrived, and we're in the process of getting those installed. So our mechanics are fabricating the piping connections that are necessary to complete that installation, and then our electricians are working on the communications and some of the low voltage wiring that is necessary for that. On the water supply side of things, I think I brought this up last month, but we did have an EPA inspection. I think it was on March 12th. They came in and spent the day with us. They provided us with 8 preliminary findings. Nothing that was really major. We don't anticipate getting a fine out of it. And so they've got 70 days after their inspection to do the preliminary report. Then they'll turn that preliminary report over to the enforcement division to determine if there is anything further that happens because of those findings. So it was something that they've only been doing for about 3 years, and what we've talked to other communities and what we saw was it was as much of a inspection of Missouri Department of Natural Resources as it was us, because MD&R comes and inspects us every 3 years, and so they're making sure that they're not missing things, or if the law says we need to provide certain documentation, do we have that documentation? If not, were we written up last time for not having that documentation? So there was an MD&R representative here as well. So the GAC exchange got pushed off from last week till the middle part of May, just because we're going through some basin cleanings at the water treatment plant where we're changing the treatment of the water, how it flows through the plant. And so we didn't want all that other going on at the same time. And so we started basin cleaning this week, and then we'll change out the GAC vessels beginning in May. As you can see on the water distribution side of things, we only had 2 leaks, a 2-inch main on Earl Street and an 8-inch main up on McMaster's Avenue. Wastewater treatment plant, you see our flows went up. That is indicative of rain, something that we're always chasing. We're also, again, preparing for that compressor replacement. And so in doing so, we pushed off our skid maintenance. That's where we have an outside company come in, go through all of our valves, all of our telemetry, making sure that is optimized and we're producing as pure as oxygen for use as we can. Wastewater collection side of things, as part of a EPA inspection that we had back in 2009 on the wastewater side of things, they want us to clean or inspect our sanitary sewer mains once every 5 years. As part of doing that, we go out and we run the vac trucks. We send the jetter hose up through there and try to clean whatever sediment there may be out of that line. And this past month, the crew was working down between the old Black Thunder building and the wastewater treatment plant. It's a rather large main for us. I think it's a 24-inch. And they pulled approximately 10 dump truck loads of sediment out of that. And so not only is it hard on the trucks to pull that material out just because of the abrasive nature of it, but then we have to turn around and we have to landfill it. So there's a cost associated with sending that to the landfill because it's considered contaminated waste. We did have 1 employee that started in sewer collection side, so we do have 6 employees there working right now. You can see under the technology reports, we're constantly upgrading, not because we want to every time, but because of the evolution of the technology and stuff being discontinued and no longer supported. And then we have the business office report. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention is just the number of delinquent accounts. This would be for March. We had a little under 1,800. February we had 1,817, and in January we had 1,761. So we're staying pretty consistent with the number of people that are delinquent on their accounts. So indicative of, I don't see a big plateau of high usage bills that coming out of the winter months. So that's all I've got on this report, unless you all have any questions.
Anybody have anything? The operations part of it?
I have a question. It might be more of a question for Paul, but when we have these storms like we had last night, what's the cost related to that? Like, I know you probably don't know from last night, but in general, what's the expense about the amount?
This would just be overtime of our own employees. We haven't reached for outside mutual aid at that point. And so it's just whatever the overtime for our employees are.
We will be able to share you that number. So we know what our average operating is, and then we will see the addition for what happened today. And it'll be coming up in about 2 weeks. You'll be able to help.
Yeah, we can put something together. Like Matt said, it'll be pretty minimal because it's just our own guys paying overtime and obviously the polls.
The extra materials, yeah.
But on a massive storm like we had back in, we had 2 of them in 2021. One was a nice storm in January, and then we had the windstorm in August of 2021. One of those cost $270,000, and the other cost $220,000. And so in the last,
both those storms we pulled in outside line help, plus we pulled in extra tree trimmers too.
Okay.
we haven't had anything close to that level since 2021.
Okay, so what about the people out of service? Won't that cost us a little bit since they're?
It will.
The
It'll
kilowatts
instead of
weren't
not
any,
having that, but if we take an average bill, let's say you've got the base rate plus another $75 for electricity. Well, that's a 30-day bill. And so if we take, you're spending about $2 a day on electricity.
Okay,
So if they've missed 2 days, there's $4.
okay.
So
That's what I was
it's
wondering
not,
about.
it's, there is a loss, but I don't believe it's significant in any way.
Okay,
Is that good enough math? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Especially on the residential side, yeah, General Mills is out for 2 days, something like that, much larger impact. But keep in mind that if we're not selling it, we're also not buying it. So that,
oh, yeah, yeah,
we're losing that markup that we do when we sell it, but that's about it.
right,
That's
okay.
why-
I was
Pretty much
thinking it would be
pennies.
more significant than that, but thank you.
You bet. Good question.
Anybody else have questions about the operations? If not, go into projects, please.
All right, project report wise, water, the big project we're working on is water loss. We've been working with Eden Brothers to verify our meters at the plant, and then we're working on with them also to build a model showing where our water is moving at different times of the day. You know, if we have a significant water user, if they're shut down, how does that change where the water flows? And that gives us an idea of where we can look for water loss. One thing that has happened in the past couple months is we bought our own portable meter. We've been installing some permanent metering pit locations throughout town that we can shut some valves, we can put that meter on there, and then we can compare that meter to what our actual sales to our customers are in that defined area. And so this is the first one we found what we think is a significant amount of water is going somewhere. We're still working through the process with our crew to make sure that we got those valves shut down 100% and nothing's going by. And hopefully we can report next month on some of the benefits of that. Big capital project in the sewer side of things has been sewer lining. Last year we did all of our 15-inch diameter mains and smaller, generally east of Ely Street and south of the flood wall. This year we're looking at doing some of the larger diameter mains, the 24-inch and 30-inch mains. And so the crew is working through and making sure that we got a good selection of mains that need lined. Again, these aren't structural repairs, so it's kind of hard to see. We're looking to seal up joints. So if it was a concrete pipe or a clay tile pipe, it may be a 4 or 6 foot piece of pipe, and then you have a joint. And so what we're trying to do is make it one piece of pipe between manhole and manhole. That way it's less locations where that groundwater or flood water can enter. North Street's continuing to go get constructed. They've made the tie-in. They're still working on one of the structures where they tie in at the Old Bridge Approach. Their primary focus the last couple weeks has been restoration work of North Street. Plan is to pour a significant amount of that street this week, and then hopefully sometime next week get that street back open. So, and then we're working on with MoDOT on the permitting for phase 2, and once that gets completed, then we will continue on with the contractor. And then on the electric side, Indian Mound Substation is the big project we've got going on. The 15th of April, they actually set the new transformer. We ordered it about 2 years ago. It showed up in St. Louis last fall. And so we started on site down there until the contractor was ready for it. They brought it in Tuesday morning, and by noon, I think they had it set and the crane and everything out of the site. One thing we are running into is just supply chain issues. There's some connectors and some brackets that we ordered back last November, and we're hoping we get them by the 15th of July. So we're working with other suppliers and also with the contractor to see what we can do to keep the project on schedule and moving forward. So
I've been watching it. It seems to be going pretty good.
yep.
Are these all normal supply problems with that kind of equipment?
This is only the second substation I've been involved with. The last one was kind of new to me because we were in the midst of COVID. We have talked with several people that deal with Ameren, and they say they're facing the same supply chain issues with them. So just seems to be maybe industry specific at this point. Everybody likes this connector, or this is the standard, and they'll build it when they can build it.
And they're also building a lot of those things out of the country. So our other transformer came from Mexico, not in Mexico, Missouri. It came from, and so they were building it there. They've got other things that are built in other countries, and that's quite problematic, especially because of it. And it also overlaps with COVID. And so supply chain issues began, and they have not improved for the electric industry. Okay.
You may have said this. How much longer on that project? We're at the end.
We were hoping to get it completed by June of this year, and then we bring a company in to do testing and make sure everything worked per plan. Right now, it looks like we may be a month or two delayed, which, again, we're replacing the existing Indian Mound substation, which is right next door to it. So as long as everything is working in there, it's not really that big of an issue. There may be some switching or some line changes that need to be done that expose us a little bit, but we're hoping to get it completed by late summer at the latest.
Okay.
And we're thinking North Street's going to be next week.
On the street was the plan.
Okay. I know there's been a lot of issues.
There has. One of the biggest ones was we had to provide sewer access to 116 North Street, and it just took a while to get it. We had to do the design. We had to see what we were going to design, begin with, figured the design, work with the property owner, got something that they were agreeable to, and then we had to develop a easement, send an easement to Arizona to get it signed and get it back, and so...
Yeah, nothing's ever easy, is it?
No.
All right. Anybody have questions of the project report? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can go to Paul for financial report. While Paul is getting ready, can I ask Darren something? For the most recent trailing 12 months, the Prairie State capital factor and all-in cost per megawatt hour are 82% and $71.50 respectively. Can you tell me what those numbers really mean?
What it means is so if you remember, there's three items that we pay when we buy power. One is the energy, the actual electricity. The other one is transmission, and the other one is capacity. And that is looking at just the absolute cost of electricity. And so, well, we've in the past had an average of coming from Prairie State, $25 and et cetera. The LMPs ahead have gone up, and we're seeing an increase to that $72 total for that electric purchase. Now, again, I'm going to ask Paul, did I misstate any of that?
So what's 82% of what?
Compared, I believe, to, if you're looking at the report, it's from the,
So the
You're
82%,
ahead.
the capacity factor would be if there were 14,000 hours in a given month and it ran for all 14,000, it would have 100% capacity factor. And so typically Prairie State runs 90, 92%. And then obviously in the fall, they're a little bit less because they have an outage every year. So that 82% that you're seeing as a 12-month average is about, give or take, 8 to 10% less than what we would normally expect Prairie State to be.
So that's how much electricity they produced compared to what they have a capacity.
it's actually runtime, right?
Right, run
It's
time.
actually runtime.
And I say that, and it sounds like Prairie State's really, really bad. An average coal plant is right around that 75, 80%. And so Prairie State historically is much better
I
than.
just didn't know where that number came from. Makes sense?
Yeah, we just take total hours in the month and then total hours that Prairie State ran.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Financial report then for March of 2025. We will start with the balance sheet. The memo there that I gave you showed a total reduction in cash of $2.5 million from the month before that's not quite right. There was a couple reimbursements that we did from the lease proceeds in our electric fund to pay ourselves back for the Indian Mountain Substation project. And so the actual reduction in cash is about $1.5 million. So there on the balance sheet, you see a cash total of about $8.6 million in the electric fund. That's more like $9.6 million in the electric fund. Still is about $4.4 million less than a year ago. Like we've said the last few meetings, the reason for that reduction continues to be the higher capacity that we're paying this fiscal year, as well as that ongoing Indian Mounds substation project. We have officially used up all of the lease proceeds as of last month, and so that the rest of what we pay will now come directly out of reserves. And then we also have the gravity filter project in the water fund that we finished up a few months ago, which has also led to a decrease in our overall cash balance. I've mentioned this before, but that is offset by an increase in fixed assets. As we pay cash for a capital project, we increase our construction in progress account until that project is completed, in which we would then capitalize it and make it into its own separate asset. So a net zero impact to the balance sheet. We also did pay our annual debt service payment on our electric fund in late March. And so same kind of deal, we pay cash for that debt service, and then we also have a corresponding reduction in that long-term liability. So again, almost a net zero impact to the balance sheet. And then utility-wide, total assets are down about 1.2% from a month ago and about 0.1% less than a year ago. So the next item that we'll look at is March compared to budget. Someone had brought up during the budget workshop if we could look at what we had budgeted so far year to date and then compare that to what we've actually spent. And so I did just want to point out that is what we do here on a monthly basis. We look at every month by month what we've budgeted for that month, and then we compare that to what we've made in revenue and then what we've spent in expense. And then we do it as well at the year-to-date level, where we look at July through March and then compare that to what we had actually budgeted. And so the first one here is comparing March to what we had budgeted for March when we approved that budget last April. So utility-wide, we did recognize a net loss in March of $253,000. The electric fund specifically, revenues came in about $136,000 less than budgeted, and purchase power is about $133,000 less than budgeted. The main reason for the decrease in purchase power is because we only recognized 2 of the MISO invoices at the higher spring capacity cost. So we had 4 MISO invoices total. 2 were at the lower winter cost and 2 were at the higher spring cost. And the reason for that is because MISO bills us 2 weeks in arrears. And so we're recognizing everything on a cash basis throughout the year, and then we true everything up at the end of the fiscal year to an accrual basis. But we do look at that on a year-to-date level as well. So the water fund did have a positive month. We did not again recognize a carbon change-out expense in water, and so operating expenses because of that came in about $84,000 less than budgeted. And in the sewer fund, we did finish the month with a net loss, but it was very consistent with budget and was less than $10,000. So looking back a year ago, so comparing this year to last March's financial performance, the electric fund did perform worse this year. Revenues were actually about $260,000 more this year, but net purchase power was about $247,000 more in the current year. Kilowatt hour sales were up by about 8.7% this year compared to last, but they were still about 4.2% less than the 5-year average. The water fund did perform better this year, again, due to not recognizing a carbon change-out expense. And the sewer fund did slightly worse this year, and gallons sold in both of those funds were about 5% less than they were the year before. Okay, so year-to-date, we are now 9 months into fiscal year 2025. And so if we look at where we're at compared to what we had budgeted, and we take that budget that was approved last April and we update it to only reflect the 9% rate increase, and we take capacity and amortize it for the full year, the electric fund's net loss is about $2.8 million, and that's about $1.2 million more than what we had budgeted. Revenues are about 1% less than budget, so pretty consistent, but it is still purchase power that continues to run high, as it's now about 7% over budget. John, a lot of that is because of Prairie State in that that capacity factor being quite a bit lower. We had a lot of time in the winter where it was not running that we would have been getting benefit from because it was down a little bit longer than expected. So obviously we did not budget for that. And then another reason for the increase in purchase power is just we've seen a little bit higher volatility in the energy market, especially in the timing of that volatility. Typically, we'll see our peak around 5 o'clock around this time of year when everybody's getting home and cooking and running laundry and things like that. And what we've seen here in the last month or two is that peak has actually been pushed back a little bit, and it's also been extended a little bit longer. And so now we're looking at a peak, at least pricing wise, around 7, 8, or 9 o'clock in the evening. And that volatility has also increased. And so we think the reason for that is probably solar. Solar is driving a lot of that lower pricing throughout the day when the sun is shining, and then when the sun goes down around that 7 o'clock, and we're kicking everything else on, coal or natural gas, whatever it may be, we're paying a little bit of a premium because demand is still so high. So a good example is tomorrow we're going to pay about $23, pretty steady throughout the day, and then we'll see that normal 5 o'clock peak around $28, $29, but then we see an even higher peak around 7, 8 o'clock of about $63 a megawatt hour. And so that's something new to us that we've kind of been noticing these last couple months, and is just pointing out some more of that volatility that we can probably expect to continue this summer, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Is that just due to, I guess, people getting off work and using up more energy, or?
Right. Yeah, I think part of it, demand could be up overall. But again, I think a lot of it is due to all this solar that's coming on, which is keeping that pricing lower during the day. But then once that solar goes down, you still have that high demand because people are still awake and using it. However, you don't have the solar to give you that lower price. And so they're using whatever it may be, natural gas, coal, whatever, but it's causing that premium in that 7 to 9 o'clock time frame.
So we're cheerleaders for Prairie State to be at 100 because then they can sell the excess.
Yes.
And our rebate would be higher.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep. So year to date for the water fund, it now has a net income that's $55,000 better than budget. However, caveat there is that we have not recognized the carbon change out that we did back in January, and we still have another one yet to do in May. And so we do have another $220,000 of expense yet to be recognized in the water fund. And so we'll be at a much higher level of expense by the end of this fiscal year. The sewer fund, though, does have a net income that's about $83,000 behind budget. Like Matt mentioned, we've had the compressors that we lost last fall, which forced us to rent a generator for the past 9 months, which has come at a much higher cost than what would be normal. So hopefully once we get those replaced, we'll have a levelized cost in the sewer fund for the rest of this fiscal year. Looking back a year ago to where we were at this point through the year, utility-wide, the net loss is slightly worse than last year. Revenues, as we would expect, are up about 6.6% compared to last year, but it's net purchase power that's up 12.3% compared to last year. And then operating expenses overall are up about 2% compared to a year ago. We've got our check register and credit card statement on there showing all of our purchases for March. for you to look at. And if you jump down to page 25, I believe, on our dashboard, we'll look at our debt service coverage ratio and where we stand. The electric fund with its hit in March is now sitting at a negative 2.85 year to date. The water fund does show that improvement to a 1.93, but again, it's got that caveat that we've got quite a bit of expense yet to recognize with those carbon change-out expenses that are coming. And then the sewer fund did decrease slightly to a 3.32. And then cash reserves are on there. I did update all of the cash reserve minimum requirements based on the proposed budget. And so you can see those changes on there. We did see increases in both electric and water, primarily due to the increase in our budget when it comes to Prairie State for capacity. And then lastly, our investment listing, you'll see the last several months a lot of red, which means we're taking those investments off, and there's no orange, which would be investments that we're adding to our portfolio. The reason for that is with the reduction in reserves, we are pretty much funneling all those maturities into our operating account to replenish what we've been spending. Last thing I just wanted to point out real quick, a bit of a shout out to Matthew Jones. Earlier in the report, under the technology section, you'll see that Matthew's been playing around with some virtual meters. There's the meter data management and analysis that we can do. And so MPUA requires us to do a data request each year to kind of keep up to date with their members. And one of those items they ask for is our peak load, which is very easy for us to pull based on our substation data through SCADA. However, this year they actually asked for it to be allocated among residential, commercial, and industrial, which requires a whole nother level of calculation. And so Matthew was actually able to take the entire load on that peak day, create a virtual meter, and then allocate it by each rate class to show how much of that 56 megawatts was used by residential, how much was used by commercial, and how much was used by industrial. So really, really interesting if you're a nerd like we are. But basically what we found was that residential did drive that peak. So of the 56.1 megawatts of peak demand that we recognized on August 27th of 2023, 24.4 megawatts came from residential, 7.7 came from commercial, and 22.97 came from industrial. So that was interesting to see that data, but definitely a shout out to Matthew for it. It took him a lot of time well, actually it didn't take near as long as what you would expect, but a lot of work done by him to come up with that. So any questions though on the financial report?
If we don't have any, then move right along to the proposed budget, which we've talked about. And I guess if we're looking to have anybody have serious questions about it, now is kind of late, but
Right. Yeah. So timeline wise, we would ask you to approve the budget tonight at this meeting, and then it has to be turned over to the city by May 15th. And so we do have the capacity auction that will be posted next Monday, a week from today. And so there is potential or a possibility that there could be some change in our costs for next fiscal year. We believe that would be pretty minimal based on all of the analysis that we've been given. However, if that were to happen in some type of worst case scenario, we would do what we did last year and schedule a special meeting towards the beginning of May to go ahead and update the budget if costs were to come in higher than anticipated. But other than that, what we went over at the budget workshop is almost what you have in front of you. The only changes that we made was we shored up just a couple of the revenue calculations in our electric and water funds. couple examples where we were taking a 2-year average in a couple line items instead of a 3, small things like that. And so that led to just a slight decrease in our revenue projections in both electric and water for next fiscal year. And then outside of that, we did go ahead and update our transfer fee and sales tax projections based on where we sit so far year to date this year, and base those off of the current proposed rate increases. Obviously, that's a net zero to us because we collect that transfer fee and then pass it on to the city. Same thing with the sales tax, but it did update those numbers just a little bit. And so the budget that you do have on your board packet today does show a net income company-wide of $1.4 million for fiscal year 2026. That comes out to around $800,000 in electric, for $690,000 in water, and a loss in sewer of, about $45,000 to make up that $1.4 million total. And then expenses, purchase power costs in the electric fund are expected to decrease $2.1 million. Operating revenues in overall are expected to increase $1.5 million, and that is due to rate increases in both electric and water, which, like we discussed at the workshop right now, are proposed at 12.2% in electric and 3% in water, respectively, and those would both occur on October 1st of 2025. Obviously, you don't see a whole lot of activity in stormwater due to the uncertainty there with revenue. But if we look at company-wide cash reserves, we're looking at an overall reduction of $306,000 to the reserve. That's compared to $4.6 million for the current fiscal year that we're in now. The primary reason for the expected reduction in cash is due to capital spending, which we project at $4.1 million, which is down from $5.5 million in the current fiscal year. The other things I did want to point out before we take any questions, and feel free to jump in at any time, we did talk about the need for the rate increases in electric and water, and so two things really in our electric fund. The cash reserve policy that the board put in place back in 2019 did state that any time that we have we dip below our minimum required reserve, that we would mandate increases to get us back to that 5% of gross revenue each year until we got back to that minimum level. Right now, that minimum level by policy is about $13.3 million, and we currently sit at about $9.3 million, and so about $4 million less than that minimum. And so the 12.2% rate increase in October would satisfy that cash reserve policy. And then the second thing is the need to meet the rate covenant in our electric fund next year, which is 1.25. The 12.2 rate increase projects a debt coverage ratio of 4.04. And so that would definitely, at least on a projection basis, meet that requirement. And we do have that same requirement in the water fund. I think that's the two things I wanted to point out, but happy to take any questions or discussions over anything at this point.
Anybody have anything? I guess, do we think that it's reasonable to do a vote to approve this budget and then be ready to make a change if we do get huge adjustments in the purchase power? Mm-hmm. We did it last year. Doesn't mean it's good or right, but I think it would be time saving to approve it now, and then if something does change significantly, we've got a conscious heads up.
My only issue is with the rate increase. I know that the people, of Hannibal are taxed already with their utilities, not just Board of Public Works, but but gas as well.
Yep.
I mean, everything is really kind of out of whack because of inflation and whatnot. What are we looking at to try to alleviate that in the future? Are we looking at anything? Or?
So we're absolutely looking at doing what we can to help on the capacity.
Okay.
And we've got hedging completed for next year. That's why we're able to hold where we're at and maintain. And again, if we'd had the full 16 that we'd requested previously, we would be able to bring it down to where we'd be coming at this point in time.
Right.
And so we are now kind of paying the sins of last year, not making those where we should have been.
Right.
And so now we're able to kind of flatten it out, hold it. That's what we're looking at.
I mean, I understand. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. I just want to do right by everybody.
You bet.
You can't please everybody all the time, unfortunately, but we can try to make it less of a burden, maybe. That's my only issue. But I'm sorry I missed the budget thing. I was not feeling well. I didn't want to give that to anybody. But I've looked it over. It doesn't look terrible, but that's my only issue, and that's my only reserve.
And we won't get any kudos for it.
Right.
But as we looked at what we're compared to the other utilities around us, we are the lowest electric rates there. And even with this that we're proposing, it's going to still keep us below many of them. We've looked at the state cost per kilowatt hour, and I believe we're in the lower 30 percentile of all of them at the KW that we're selling it for. So we're competing. We're not out of bounds. We're not the highest by any means.
Right.
We're well below 50 percentile of what's out there. Again, we recognize that it's tough times, but we're going to continue to be just as tight. You know, it's like today when we look at could we cut back on employees? Do we want to cut back on our response times? Do we want to, was it okay to have people out of power for 3 days or 4 days? If that's if that's something that we want to start, if that, even though we're the lowest rates, if we're going to cut any more, we're going to reduce the amount of reliability. We're going to reduce our response times, and so.
Right. I mean, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's really kind of I don't envy Paul at all in what he's got to do, but. Like I said, I've looked it over. I know we're trying to do what's best for everybody. It's just really hard. But I just want to keep that in mind as well. We got to think about everybody else too. So
What was brought up last time that we were talking about rate increases, some of the optics were, you guys do whatever you want, you just jack the rates up to get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at the frugality of the different things that we're doing by reducing tree trimming and looking at every agreement that we've got. I don't know that I'd be able to cut any more corners if I owned the business. So I think they're doing a pretty darn good job. The silliness is that our costs went up by $4 million. And what we made a conscious decision to do, and the board voted on it, with a mayor breaking the tie,
mm-hmm.
was to violate two major things that we'd already agreed to. One is to not increase as much as we need to keep the income coming in, to keep the reserve requirements up. So we're eating into those. And the next one is the bond covenant, or the lease purchase covenant agreement verbiage that we had previously agreed to in 2022. And that was, regardless of anything, and Bill signed the paper that says, yeah, we will increase the rates to keep our profitability, and I hate to use that word, but net margin up to a point of being 1.25%
Right.
above the income. We all knew what was going to happen. I specifically asked our legal advice at the time if we are going to be at risk by violating the covenant of that agreement, and we were assured that we were fine.
It's incorrect.
Okay.
I was here.
No, you weren't
I
the one
didn't-
that said it.
Well, I wasn't the one that said it, but I was here. I heard the advice that was given.
Hmm.
And the advice that was given was that while it was a concern, there were no guarantees that that is what would happen. I've read the notice that was given to you, and that was one factor that affected your bond rating. There were additional things such as the increase of the rates, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to debate you, but, don't misconstrue what legal counsel gave.
Well, the question was, are we safe by not increasing it like we said we would in the agreement? And the advice was, you'll be fine if you don't.
Again, on the record, that's not the advice that was given. The advice that was given you was that it is certainly a possibility, but there are certainly no guarantees. And my statement to you is, I have read the document that was given which affected your bond rating, and that is one of multiple factors that were in there. One of the factors that were also in there was increase in the rates to the people, and that they were very concerned that the rates were already on the high end and that you were getting a bunch of pushback from the public. You could screw it that, oh, well, we didn't raise the rates and that's the problem. But, and I don't care what you say. You guys can say what you want and you put out whatever you want, but don't misconstrue what the legal advice was and don't misconstrue what the legal documentation said. That's all I'm asking.
Okay. So the hesitation to increase any rates is out there, and it's going to have to be faced sometime, October, it looks like.
Okay.
And I would also like to add, it was my understanding as well, as James said, that we were already out of ordinance of the rate covenants from another decision that was made. So it wasn't just that particular rate increase. Our debt ratio covenants was already being,
Yeah, it wasn't high enough.
it wasn't where it was supposed to be to begin with.
You were out of compliance with your bond covenant.
Thank you. Yes.
That's the phrase,
Yes.
That's the phrase you were looking for.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what you- yeah.
exactly. So it wasn't just that one decision that put us in that position.
Okay.
So should we approve this budget now, anticipating that the prices that we're going to be getting from the auction will be within reason, and we should react?
John, before
Sure.
you get into that, from my understanding, what he's asking for on the vote right now is on the proposed budget that does not have to do with the rate increase. That's another subject.
Right.
Correct.
But the rate increase would come at a later discussion time. But you also said that would raise you to 4.1 million reserve with these increases you said, and you're required to have 2.6 million or something?
So
But my point being, the proposed raises here would put you quite a ways above that. So that's possibly,
I think I understand what you're asking. So the proposed budget that we have on the table tonight does include the revenue that would be generated from a 12.2% rate increase on October 1st. That would generate about $1.4 million to the reserve, which satisfies that
The rate
5%.
and
It satisfies that 5% requirement by our cash reserve policy. It also projects a rate coverage ratio, a debt coverage ratio of 4.04, whereas the requirement is a 1.25.
so to me, that means there's some little bit of room to play in there.
Again, we've got,
Without-
so we have two requirements that we're trying to meet.
Exactly, yes.
Number one is the debt covenant ratio.
Mhm.
That debt covenant ratio needs to be 1.25 or greater.
Right,
The second item
it's reserved.
is our cash reserve policy. And the lesser of those two evils, as you might say, is the debt ratio. That one will be easier to meet. The one for the cash reserve is the higher standard.
Right.
In order to meet that one, we need to have the 12.2% rate increase in electric. And that's the one that we're recommending so that we're and we're meeting the requirements of both of our requirements. If we just go to the one, we're still failing to meet the requirements of the second.
I agree. However, trying to anticipate what the public is going to say out there. If you at least meet the first one, you're started on the right track. And I would say that one definitely, that rate covenant, or not the rate covenant, but the rate covenant needs to be met with whatever, if there's an increase with whatever one there is. And that might be a potential for a progressive, if you don't go the full 12.3. I'm just saying that's a possible consideration that the public might appreciate.
And the thing I will also just simply put out there is that we're proposing this rate increase for October 1. So there's some time. We're going to be able to react to changes as we come to that. And so.
Plus, we've got the auction coming up that may
Correct.
save a little bit right there too.
Correct.
And what timeline do you expect to hit your reserve? Because you're going to increase the rate and that revenue is going to be coming in. When do you expect to hit that?
End of the year. Correct, Paul? We're looking at the fiscal year,
Yeah.
which goes from July 1 to June 31st.
Yep, yeah, so the beauty about next year's, or maybe not beauty, but the simplicity of next year's budget is that it's more evenly allocated throughout the year where we'll be adding to that reserve. Whereas this year, we had the higher cost in the fall, and then we had the lower cost in the winter, and then the higher cost in the spring, and so we were kind of all over the place. This year, we'll be able to keep it a little bit more consistent. And so that $1.4 million that we would add to the reserve is the projection at the end of next fiscal year.
Right.
So June of 2026. And keep in mind, if anybody, the hardest part about budgeting for a utility is weather. And so all of this could change very much based on a harsh summer or winter or vice versa. And so that's why we do have some cushion in there that we need to build in.
But that's just throwing some ideas out, not advocating really one way or the other. Some things to think about.
So do I have a motion to approve the budget as printed?
I'll make motion.
And a second?
I'll second it, the motion to approve the budget.
And all approved? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need a roll call?
No, you do not.
Nope, okay.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to new business. Matt, you've got a list of a couple of vehicles that need to be surplus. I guess you guys have looked at those two vehicles that need to go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just as we do periodically.
Yeah.
As we no longer need anything, we bring it to you per policy to have it declared surplus so that we can, we've been putting it on Purple Wave with good results. It advertises to a wide audience, and we seem to bring top dollar for our vehicles. So that's what I'm here seeking, is declare surplus of a 2003 Chevrolet 2500 with about 162,000 miles, and a 2008 Chevrolet 1500 with a little over 202,000 miles.
We have a motion to approve those to be surplus.
I'll make motion.
And a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have any comments from the city attorney?
No comment.
Okay. How about any general discussion? Anybody? What I'd like for us to consider maybe is putting something on our website that shows actively what our rates are compared to others. Maybe like a check your price tool that says, here's what Fulton is, here's what Columbia is, here's what Hannibal is, and have a list of, just do a statistical mean on which ones to select. And anybody can go there at any time and just see where we are. It takes somewhat minimum updates to look out and see what Columbia's rates are, and we'll be able to have a side-by-side comparable list right on the website. I don't know about getting into the complexities that John Ling brought up about, he did a weighted average based on the customer charge and whatnot, but maybe a customer charge and a rate per kilowatt hour, just to show a matrix or a graph as to what we Hannibal residents are paying compared to other ones. I remember looking at the last rate increase that we were facing, and the average cost per kilowatt hour is 14 cents in Missouri. Ours is 10.4. And if that matrix is right there in front of anybody, and they can be referred to the website, and it's presented in a clear factual basis, it might be at least a reference point that everybody can look at.
Excellent.
If we consider that, that'd be great.
Yes. All right. If nothing else, we'll look to get.
One more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually got a comment from someone on my phone here. Says your bond covenant is required. Okay? Your cash reserve policy is something you established. It can be modified. It can be eliminated. It can be thrown out. You can do whatever you want. That's something you did.
Yep. That's true.
Based on recommendations.
But it's a policy that you established yourself.
You are correct, yes.
And that can be modified by you.
Far be it for me to stand up for the board, but I'm going to stand up for the board, which is taking a position that you don't keep a reserve is just crazy. That's like saying, I agree. That's like saying, well, I make $1,000 a week, so I spend $1,000 a week, and then when something catastrophic happens, your furnace quits, blah, 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 and obviously we have things that cost a lot more than a furnace. You don't have the money to pay for it. And that's
I agree.
And that's what the public needs to understand is these guys are doing their job when they start taking a look at trying to keep savings account. Savings account, so things can be paid for, is financially prudent, and it's our job to make sure that the council understands that. Or council, pardon me, the people understand that, because where we don't want to be is get in a position where we can't purchase something or we can't repair something because we have no reserves.
I agree, but the point being, if we violate the cash reserve policy, it's something we created. Yeah, you don't want to totally do away with your cash reserves. By all means, you can't do that. However, the crucial one to me is that bond service.
I think to your point, Councilman, I apologize for stepping over you guys, but I think to your point is, I agree with you, and I think a lot of other members of the council agree with you, because I'm one of the people who brings the message that we need to look at all things when we try to balance everything.
Yes.
We need to think about what the rates are to the people. We need to think about cash reserves. We need to think about bond covenants. It all plays into it. There are multiple things.
Exactly.
And I think they're trying.
Yes, they are. No doubt.
I obviously yell at people, but don't sell your board short. I think they've got a very difficult job based on what's going on. Not the least of which what's going on with rates and what we have to do going into the open market. But I'm not going to start debating that one with you. But I mean, when we're out there bidding on the open market, there's so many factors there, and it gets crazy complicated.
Right, and I agree with you totally. And what John said, advertise what people are paid. That's absolutely important.
The point you make about the reserves being a policy, you're exactly right. If you look at the reserve policy, it says keep so much, add 5%, blah, blah, blah. But there's nothing on the bottom that says if you don't, here's what's going to happen.
Right. Well, I
The
understand.
bond covenant, on the other hand, says if you don't do this, here's a list of 8 things that can happen with no notice. And I'm not going to go through that list of things again. They're easy to read on the bond covenant agreement.
As you're looking at the rates and comparing the rates, it would be beneficial for you at least to understand the income ratio for the city of Hannibal versus those other cities where you're comparing the rate. What is the debt to income ratio? So if the median income rate is much less in Hannibal, your rate comparison to Columbia is irrelevant if the people in Columbia make a significant amount more money than the people in Hannibal. I'm not saying go and report that or advertise it, but it might be something you'll want to understand, so when you do have people questioning it, you know where they're coming from.
So your recommendation, I'm kind of hearing, is if we do put something on the website, forget St. Louis and Columbia, have relatively similar sized communities.
With the same kind of median income. So that would be a fair comparison to compare another city that has the income rate that Hannibal does versus, I mean, you can go to Beverly Hills too and you can compare their rates, but that really isn't relative to the city of Hannibal. So I think what you're saying, John, is correct. Find some other cities that really relate on the income as well as the rate that they're paying. It gives you a little more leverage presenting that to people.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Bob, I have to agree with you and disagree with you. We live, unfortunately, in a microwave society. Everybody wants everything right now, and material things are paramount anymore. If you can't see it, therefore it doesn't exist or it's irrelevant. So people want to know that we're doing the best we can with what we've got and their money. So I do agree with you in the fact that the people need to know that we're trying to do the best we can with what we've got, but also we need to be able to do what we can with what we've got. You know, I mean, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, and I mean, I'm the same as anybody else. I work a 48-hour-a-week job, and I've got to pay the same rates they got to pay, and it's hard. It really is, and I've got the same complaints they do, but I think in the last couple months that I've been on the board, I've realized what we're going through and what we're dealing with. So while I commiserate with them, I also see a different side of it too. Unfortunately, what we've got to do is one of those things that nobody likes to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I sat there too. I understand what you're doing, and I know that you're doing the best you possibly can. All I'm saying, to me, the most important thing is that debt service.
Right.
We've got to get that up.
I mean, personally,
But once we hit that, we can work within that reserve since it's something that we established. If we don't make it this year, well, let's shoot for next year.
right.
It's not as crucial as that debt service.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Yes, since you said it, you have the power to wipe it out, but you would be foolish to do that.
I mean,
Don't get me wrong on that.
personally, I don't like the budget. But the one thing my granddaddy taught me was patience. So I'm willing to look and see what's going to happen in 6 months or a year. So that's what I'm kind of going with. And I hope that the people of Hannibal understand that and understand that we're trying the best we can and trying to get what we can out of what we've got. But at this point, I mean, it's Paul's worked his butt off trying to get this budget together, and I don't like it, but I'm going to see where it goes.
Yeah.
You know.
And on the other side of what Cole was just saying, sometimes, like him, I have been on that side of the Board of Public Works, and now sitting on this side, I'm realizing that a decision that we make right now that isn't popular might save us money down the road. For instance, if we don't do one thing now, just like when we didn't approve the rate increase, well, now our credit rating went down, which means things are going to cost us a little bit more money. So sometimes when you're sitting on that side of it, you don't always see the work that has to be done now to help save money for later. It just seems like now we're attacking, we want more money, we want more money. So
I think the average Hannibal Hannibalian doesn't understand bond rating. They don't care.
I agree.
They're suffering. Darren made a very strong comment that I think should be used to promote what you're doing. Is we looked at cutting service, response time. Those are your options. When you understand what options that went into the decision, people will come alongside a little more because they don't want to sit and be out for days either. There's meat in the freezer and the fridge, it's going bad. But when you spell those options out, I think they'll weigh that a little heavier than a bond rating. Average person don't give a damn about a bond rating. It doesn't mean anything to them. They're suffering, just trying to make ends meet. So I'd be careful of talking that high-end stuff to the average people.
I mean, you definitely want to get the for lack of a better term, the layman's perspective out there. I mean, I think what JFK said it best, that what's popular is not always right, and what's right is not always popular.
Right.
So, I mean, and it's one of those things that we just have to try to show the people that we're doing the best we can with what we've got, and we're trying to make it work for them as well. It's hard trying to budget.
The important part is letting it. I'll use an analogy too. John Maxwell said, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." When you share the difficult decision that you made and how it impacts their daily life, it will mean more to them than protecting the budget.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And that's the layman message that I think would be helpful.
And I think you definitely hit the nail on the head with that. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I think just more of a comment, like with talking about the 12%, kind of just talking with Paul, I think it might be nice to put like on the website, like how much that's actually going to affect their bill. Like, is it $5, $10? Like, get that out there so they know that, rather than they hear 12%. Well, is that $40? Is that $60? If you just kind of do an average of what a normal person is, get that out there so they say, well, it's only $18, $19 or whatever, then they may be a little more willing to go with it rather than thinking that it's higher.
Well, you're absolutely correct.
So
because,
I just think that needs to be promoted out there, getting closer to the October stuff, just so they know that.
Right. Well, 10% of $1 million is a heck of a lot of money, but 10% of $100 is not that much.
So
So,
they just
yeah.
don't know what that
right.
cost is coming. If you get it out there just at an average, at least they know that it's.
Yeah,
pennies
just like when you
compared-
said $2 a day, I'm like, well, okay. You know, I thought it was gonna be more than that, but yeah, if you break it down, it is just $2 a day.
To somebody on a fixed income.
Yes.
that
It's- yeah,
don't
no,
get Social
totally.
Security, $2 a lot a day. They're probably eating on that, so you have to be, understanding of where they're coming from. And just because we're not in that situation, doesn't mean there aren't people.
One of the big problems that happens is nobody's listening to this online. Less than 1% of the population of Hannibal gets involved in or knows what happens at the city council meetings and or these. So 99% are just hit with the headline. And we've been trying to get communications out, workshops, website, Facebooks, those kinds of things. And to your point, I paid $122 for my utility bill a few days ago. The electricity portion was $20.70. So a 10% increase on the $122 overall bill would have been $2 to $124. So I could live with a 10% increase because it was $2 out of 122. How do you tell John Q. Public ratepayer that that's what it is instead of 12%? Because you're right, 12% is like, oh my God. But 12% on my last bill would have been $2.05.
I think that's an excellent question. I think,
Yeah, how do you get it
how
out
do
there?
you do that? You have to hit the ones that are there. Some will, some won't, so what? You've got to hit the ones that are on there listening, and you've got to increase that level of people that are listening. Maybe a podcast, maybe a regular talk to the Board of Public Works opportunity. They certainly want to talk about it in Facebook and the garbage, but they don't. Why not have a forum to invite people to actually come in and have a say?
We have a board meeting every month, that's the open.
You're right, yeah.
It can't make it
Exactly.
more convenient.
However, though, guys, a lot of people don't understand what you're talking about. What are they gonna do? Paul did a great job of presenting the budget, but how many people that live in this town are gonna understand what he just said? They don't, and so they don't join the board meeting because it's over their head. What would they get out of it?
One opportunity I think that we have, because people don't call me ever as a board member, but people call their councilman and complain to their councilman. So if the councilmen are all 100% aware and can explain that to the people who call them, and I think with enhanced communications like we're really trying to do, that would be a good place to at least start.
I appreciate the discussion. Thank you for all of the comments and all of that's been said.
Next step is to go into closed session. So can I get a motion that you got the list of people?
Yep, I do. Pursuant to section 610.021, paragraph 1 and 12 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, the meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss litigation and contracts. It will include the board members, Darren Gordon, Matt Muslinger, Paul Trenhale, and the city attorney.
And that's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
James, I drove by your house for the first time since you had all your work done the other day.